could be called domestic terrorism, Trump agreed. And he also said that he will take action, and he vowed to, quote, catch them. Watch.
Mr. President talks about some of the violence that's been going on around the country at dealerships. Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. You know, I've stuck up for the NFL. I've stuck up for a lot of American companies and other companies, but American companies. Those people are going to go through a big problem when we catch them. And we have you got a lot of cameras up. We already know who some of them are. We're going to catch them. And they're bad guys. They're the same guys that screw around with our schools and universities. The same garbage. And we're going to catch them.
Now, in terms of who's behind the attacks and whether it will be treated as a type of terrorism, we may get some answers soon. Trump said that it's the same people that, quote, screw around with our schools and universities, meaning, of course, these big protests we're seeing. We assume he's talking about that, or he's talking about the crazy gender policies. But now, look, the House DOJ Committee has also issued a letter calling for the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate. Now, the letter is co-signed by 8 members of Congress, and it says this, quote, "These attacks, which seem to involve coordinated acts of vandalism, arson, and other acts of violence, seriously threaten public safety. Reports suggest that groups like Antifa, known for their history of domestic terrorism, including throughout the summer of 2020 following the death of George Floyd, may be involved in the recent Tesla attacks. Notably, a lot of this was in Seattle, where it's one of the hotbeds of Antifa. And they say this, quote, "I urge the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigations to prioritize a thorough investigation into these matters." Now, the letter goes on to cite reports, including from Elon Musk, alleging that several NGOs, non-governmental organizations affiliated with the Democrats, are behind the attacks, meaning this is a political operation involving major organizations, and this is coordinated. Now, it names several organizations, including Democratic Socialists of America, Rise and Resist, and a whole lot of others. And it also includes the allegations against Act Blue. They restate it. Now, there still doesn't seem to be any publicly available evidence tying the groups to the attacks, none that we've seen at least. But there is now an official call from Congress and the president to have this investigated. Now, in terms of whether the attacks could be defined as terrorism, this is another issue. Now, look, the technical definition of terrorism is important. Technically, terrorism is defined as using violence to achieve a political goal. Now, technically, if someone is using violence, arson, threats against people, doing this in a coordinated way, as a way to discourage the use of Tesla cars, but with the broader intent to harm somebody politically, sending a political message by attacking the supporters of a business tied in with the public individual, you could actually argue it is a form of terrorism. Again, violence with the intent to cause a political outcome. After all, that is what it is, right? It seems these attacks are meant to work as a type of intimidation. They want to make people not want to drive a Tesla or drive a Cybertruck because they might worry some crazy person is going to threaten them for it or vandalize their car. Maybe you have a kid. Would you want your kid in a car when you know your car is going to be targeted by people like this? Firebombing, vandalizing, drawing swastikas on the side of it, that's happening as well. Or if you're a dealership, somebody firebombing your dealership, would you want to risk that? That's the message being sent with these attacks. And if there are, in fact, major organizations behind it, that can mean they are coordinating on what are acts of terrorism in the United States. That is major. Now, look, the other side of this argument is that the protests, and even the violent protests, have been relatively tolerated when they come from the left, not from the right. We've seen groups like Antifa, right, this anti-fascist action, quote-unquote, big quote-unquote because they're kind of fascist, openly using violence and threats as a political tool. They've done this openly. Now, we've watched them target conservatives. If conservatives hold a demonstration or event, Antifa might come out and target them, physically attack them. And we've watched watched as Antifa goes to the homes of Americans and threaten people for their political views, including journalists. We've watched as they threaten violence, or even carry it out in many regards, in order to dissuade people from taking political stances that they don't approve of. If you have an unapproved political stance, you may be targeted by these organizations like Antifa. And behind these organizations are, in fact, a large networks of other organizations that fund them, tied in through a few different chains to these major organizations now being singled out yet again. In other words, it is coordinated, it is tied in with political movements, and for some reason, it's tolerated, at least legally, maybe until now. We watched Antifa not only face very little repercussion for this, but they even received what appeared to be political protection in some cases. In many cities where Antifa was carrying out these acts of violence or threats of violence, there were reports of even local politicians protecting them, even giving stand-down orders to police so they would not be prosecuted. Now, the actions of Antifa would technically fall under the definition of terrorism, using violence to achieve a political goal. So why was that allowed? Why was that tolerated? Why was that not prosecuted? Well, the bigger issue is that, since it was allowed for so long, it seems there's an expectation now that violence, threats, and attacks are somehow okay, at least when they come from the far left of politics. They've become used to this. They seem to believe they can do it without repercussion, and they've continued doing it. Trump's new message over the attacks on Tesla suggests those days just came to an end, because if they label this as a terrorist movement, it means that every organization tied in with it could be charged by extension. This could become massive if they actually take action on it, but we don't know if they will or not. Now, look, of course, on the Tesla front, some are also assuming this is about business. If you read a lot of the, corporate media, they're like, oh, Trump just wants to sell Teslas. And, on this, Elon Musk has announced that Tesla is doubling the domestic production within the next couple of years. And he did talk about this during his meeting with Trump when they talked about the attacks on them as being terrorism. Now, this ties in with Trump's broader goal of reviving domestic manufacturing and bringing the auto industry home, back to the United States. And there's a big focus on that right now. This is the announcement which, Musk made at the Tesla event and saying he's going to do this. Watch.
As a function of the great policies of President Trump and his administration, and as an act of faith in America, Tesla is going to double vehicle output in the United States within the next 2 years. Double.
Big deal. That's great. Thank you.
Elon Musk followed this up with a post on X stating, quote, in support of the policies of President Donald Trump and to demonstrate a confidence in the future of the United States, Tesla commits to doubling vehicle production in the U.S. within 2 years. And he may be able to do it too, because with domestic manufacturing, the return of it, the auto industry is going to become the big focus of this, reviving maybe Detroit, bringing back the auto industry. And Tesla, of course, is now a major American industry, a major American company for that. So we shall see. In other news, there's been a lot of discussion about economic troubles in the United States. Many news outlets have been alleging that Trump's tariff war, it risks destabilizing the economy. There was the market drop that followed some of the recent tariffs between the U.S. and Canada, but now, well, it seems that inflation is actually going down. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.